seeing Africa through the lens of photographer Dandiwe Mwerio. Focusing on women, she tells the stories of people, places and cultures across the continent.
On Nigeria's 60th independence anniversary, President Muhammadu Buhari launches a national ethics and integrity policy.
Hello, and thanks for tuning in to the show that goes around the continent to bring you stories near and far. I'm Chamberlain Osoa, Channels Television here in Lagos. I'm joined by Vincent Makori with a new look from Voice of America in Washington.
Well, thanks. I'm Vincent Makori, happy to be with you again for another edition of Africa 54. Due to the global outbreak of COVID-19, the Voice of America has reduced staffing at VOA headquarters in Washington. So as you see, our broadcast looks a little different for now. We appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. Let's start off with the latest from Nigeria. Chamberlain Oso in Lagos brings you that story.
As part of celebrations marking Nigeria's 60th independence anniversary, President Muhammadu Buhari has launched the National Ethics and Integrity Policy. He says that he is committed to the anti-corruption fight, as the menace can mark the end of the country if left unchecked.
As Nigeria marks its 60th anniversary, the issue of corruption, which has marred the country's image, has once again come to the fore. While speaking at the second annual summit of the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission, ICPC, President Muhammadu Buhari recounts all that he has done over the years to fight the scourge, even as the country's military head of state.
As military head of state, I fought corruption headlong and held public officers who abuse their offices or misuse public funds to account. Furthermore, I introduced the war against indiscipline, one of various cardinal objectives was promotion of our cherished culture of ethical conduct, integrity, and hard work. We must all join hands together to fight corruption and return to our traditional values of honesty and integrity. I hereby use the opportunity of this summit to launch the National Ethics and Integrity Policy as a fresh roadmap to return Nigeria to these critical national values.
According to the 2019 Corruption Perception Index of Transparency International, Nigeria is ranked the 146th most corrupt nation in the world out of 180 countries. That's why the ICPC chairman is leaving no stone unturned to change the narrative. He details what the commission has done in recent times to fight corruption.
We discovered payments to federal colleges, secondary schools for school feeding, amounting to 2.67 billion during the lockdown when children were not in school, and some of this money we traced ended up in personal accounts. We have arrested those who are involved, and investigations are ongoing to who they fed when children were at home and there was a lockdown.
The Nigerian Senate has also thrown its weight behind the anti-corruption fight.
As a conscious and patriotic assembly, the 9th National Assembly has passed several important legislations to advance the social and economic well-being of our country.
With the launch of the National Ethics and Integrity Policy, which is meant to promote good and ethical conduct among Nigerian citizens, it is hoped that the country will gradually and steadily shed the label of corruption attached to its image.
All right, so to give us more on this matter, we're joined by Mr. Yinka Oyenichi, who is a legal practitioner. Well, thank you for joining us today on Africa 54.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with our 60th independence anniversary, which, of course, we're commemorating here. What are your immediate thoughts about it?
Okay, so like I said, it's a good thing that we can celebrate 60 years of being independent from colonial rule. It is a time to introspect. Was it a colonial rule that we had any validity of going into? Did we have to go into colonialism? Have we learned our lessons? Is Nigeria truly independent, okay, of the different challenges that we face in the Committee of Nations economically and with respect to our foreign policy. Is Nigeria truly independent? Now, within the polity of Nigerians as well, do we have good governance? Does it portend as if we are in excellent self-governance? Those are the questions we should ask. And for me, I think that Nigeria is under construction. Nigeria is being built as of this time. And that's how I see this commemoration of turning 60 as an independent nation.
Well, I know that the president in his speech did highlight a lot about us moving together and doing things together. But previously, there had been several fears, different articles from different perspectives about disintegration. Tell us what you think can pull us together, perhaps what impediments we need to overcome.
So it is very important for us to start becoming sincere with ourselves as a nation. And Nigeria contains at least 250 ethnic groups. Okay, Nigeria is probably as big as the United States, which boasts of 50 states. That is the outlook which we have. We are homogenic in nature, by way of our culture, by way of tradition, by way of outlook and identities. It is important. Even in Canada, we have minority groups and we have indigenous groups that are recognized in governance. It is important that Nigeria begins to recognize this diversity without saying that we are restricted to 6 geopolitical zones. Nigeria has hundreds of languages with different identities. We are not disintegrated yet, but we are very close to it. So it is important that we start giving voice to the voiceless. I say one thing in conclusion on that point. When every Nigerian feels a part of this big polity, then we will know that we are not disintegrating.
You know, as part of efforts to curb corruption and address some of these other challenges, the president did refer to the launch of the National Ethics and Integrity Policy. Do you see this as the right steps, and how far-reaching do you think this can go?
So I think that the policy is elementary in nature. In all the climes of the world, when you talk ethics, ethics eases into governance. However, ethics is not on the national outlook. It's private individuals who promote ethics. Until you start having enforceable paradigms, ethics will not work. Oh, I am from the technology sector, and we keep talking about ethics of emerging technologies and all of that. It is self-governance. It is anticipatory in nature. It is not enforceable. It's like the SAPICOM that Nigeria has had before, the same sets of policies that we have had, SAP, that we call SAP, MAMSA, Mass Mobilization for Social Justice, Economic Recovery, and Self-Reliance. All of those things guided us when we were in the military. At this time, we should start having enforceable regulations. Yes, it is important, and we have seen it that the president has always said that fighting corruption will take us to where we need to be. But the vice president says there are cracks in the polity, which we agree. These issues stare us in the face. The Independence Day speech also shows that we are being built. It's a process. Now is not the time to talk of ethics. Now is the time to talk about enforceable regulations.
It does appear as though this means different things to different people, to the extent that some think that we're not all on the same page in terms of eliminating corruption or reducing it to the barest minimum. But since 1999, we've been striving to ensure that we achieve this. What do you think is missing? What else should we be considering?
The first thing we need to do is to look at RMFAC, that's the Revenue Mobilization Commission. You need to look at that. We need to cut the cost of governance. It just doesn't make sense. Now, you can have all the ethical processes in the world, but people still go out on the streets and see legislators with mammoth remuneration. It doesn't make any sense at all. So we need to start from cutting costs of governance. You need to see your president drive a made-in-Nigeria vehicle. You need to see your ministers feel the pain of the rest of the people. That's when the people will buy into the policy. When you're having a policy framework, you need to look at the roles of the different actors. Now, as it is in Nigeria, the only actor is government.
All right, then, Yinka Oyeniji, thank you for joining us today on Africa 54.
Thank you for having me. Good day.
Weeks after heavy rains triggered major flooding in Senegal's capital, Dakar, areas of stagnant waters remain, exposing a gap in funding that authorities had promised would avert such crisis. David Doyle reports.
On the outskirts of Senegal's capital, Dakar, floodwaters have turned green, as algae makes a home in streets abandoned by many residents. 2 weeks after a wet season's worth of rain fell in just a few hours, and some locals say it's not just the waters that have been left to stagnate. On that day, Al-Haj Sahir Sal, leader of the Khor Masar neighbourhood, worked from 6 a.m. until 10 p.m. bailing out people's homes.
After that, we placed bricks in the neighbourhood street so people could circulate. We only helped ourselves. We received no official help, no financial help.
After widespread floods in 2009 and 2012, authorities promised future crises would be averted through a flood management plan, worth 766 billion CFA francs, or around $1.4 billion US. But a 2014 report from the World Bank-managed Global Facility for Disaster Reduction and Recovery expressed concern that over 90% of the plan had not been funded. The World Bank won't reveal the current size of the shortfall, but said the government is working to close the gap. President Macky Sall's office did not respond to a request for comment. But with 16,700 people critically impacted by the latest deluge, according to figures from the Red Cross, civil society groups and opposition leaders want to know what's happened. Zeinul Abidine Gay, Chief of Staff for the Mayor of Khor Masar, said progress is being made.
To get rid of floods, it's simple. We'll need drainage, so we're 50 years late and we have to make up for it. That's what the government is trying to do.
He said 20 drains have been dug in the area, but that the population is really dense, so the efforts are never enough. In Dakar's Yambul district, a system was built to funnel away excess water. But floods returned this year anyway.
We had a pump installed over there.
Resident Ismail Afay says there's been a lack of maintenance.
But unfortunately, that pump hasn't worked since 2014.
And meanwhile, the threat to such neighbourhoods is rising. Research says floods in West Africa increased from an average of 2 per year in the 1990s to more than 8 in the 2000s.
The Chief Operating Officer at Nigerian energy company RenSource, Anu Adasalum, is fighting to address the difficulties female engineers face in securing jobs while broadening access to energy in the country.
Two female electric engineers, Good News Akindele and Esther Adegbaju, climb out of a manhole as they head to the rooftop of one of the many buildings in the affluent Victoria Island area of Lagos. The plan for them today is to finish the last stages of the installations of solar panels for a client.
It's really interesting, it's tasking, and I get the opportunity to help people. You know, people have the stereotype about female engineers, but the fact that I can actually do it is very, very exciting, and it's fulfilling for me.
Their boss, Anu Adasalum, is at the forefront of recruiting female engineers.
People are not comfortable with women carrying out physical activities for engineering work, but that doesn't mean women aren't interested in it. They're just not given the opportunity to. And people do feel fairly strongly about it. So we've actually had a husband call. Someone's husband called me and informed me not to let his wife ever climb a roof, even though that's exactly what she wanted to do.
She adds that she was inspired to hire more female engineers after she realized that there were no high-ranking female field engineers when she tried to recruit some. She then decided to start training them from scratch. Electrical engineers Adegbaju and Akindele have been with RenSource since late 2019.
People see me on rooftop and always looking at me, and their eyes are always on me. Of course, it could be weird and challenging, but then those are things that actually have made me want to continue and be better at what I do.
RenSource currently employs 11 female electrical engineers, and Adasalum hopes that this will inspire more engineering companies to hire more women in the sector in an industry that is still largely male-dominated.
It's time now for a short break. As we do, we'd like to remind you to visit our website, channelstv.com, for news and programming around the clock. You can also find us at youtube.com/channelsweb. Still to come, disaster relief in the wake of flooding. South Sudanese refugees and local communities struggle after floods leave thousands in need of humanitarian support.
Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. One way to reframe the way the people, places and cultures on the continent of Africa are viewed is through imagery. So Africa 54's Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick dropped in on a Kenyan photographer during one of her shoots in Nairobi. Thandiwe Murio says the perfect picture is about tone, texture, color, and context, and that's why her focus is on African women.
My name is Thandiwe Murio, a photographer based in Nairobi, Kenya. I describe my work as unapologetically African because I want to celebrate the positive things about being an African. So often our continent is projected as this poor place full of suffering, and we're not perfect, but there's so many beautiful things about Africa, and I want to celebrate those in my work. What's missing from the narrative about Africa and its people is our voice. So often we've had so many other people come to tell our story. I think it's one thing to have our story told by somebody from outside our context, but there's things that we see that they may not necessarily see because we live here, we have community here. I think now is an exciting time to be an African because we're really owning our voice. Recently in my work, I have been drawn to our history as Kenya and Africa in general, looking at what kind of traditional hairstyles did we have, what kind of traditional clothing did we have, and taking those elements and modernizing them and adding the pop of color that I have in my work and making modern nods to history. It's amazing how much beauty there is just in this one continent, all the way from South Africa, all the way up. You can just find such different features, such different hair, such different skin tones. I remember growing up as a child, I always felt frustrated. Why is my hair not longer? Why is my nose not more narrow? Why are my lips so big? And it took me a while as a photographer to realize, hold on, there's nothing wrong with me. When I finished university, I was feeling pressure to be what every African parent wants their child to be, a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer. And I really struggled with the question of, can I do photography for the rest of my life? Fortunately, my father had coffee with me one day and he told me, why are you considering other jobs? You love photography, so be a photographer. And it was the most liberating conversation I've ever had in my life. I think just because of all the stereotypes around being an artist in Africa, I was afraid to go for it, and having that conversation released me to truly enjoy exploring my photography.
South Sudanese refugees and local communities are in urgent need of support after heavy rains and floods damaged their homes. Rivers like the Nile burst its banks, leaving thousands in desperate need of humanitarian support.
80-year-old Bak says in all the years he has spent in Sudan, he has never witnessed anything like the recent floods that have wreaked havoc in the country. Heavy seasonal rains have caused devastating floods in parts of Sudan, displacing thousands of people, including refugees, internally displaced people and their host communities. Bak, a Sudanese refugee who lives 50 meters from the Blue Nile in Khartoum's Shag al-Nil locality, says his shelter got flooded at night as the water started to rise.
For 7 days, the water was all around. I could not move because I did not want to leave my belongings.
Vulnerable refugees and locals alike have been hardest hit by the extreme weather. Many houses, critical water points and latrines across the country have been destroyed or damaged. South Sudanese refugee Christina Diang was among some 2,000 people affected by the rains in Al-Droshab. Her shelter could barely protect her family from the weather.
I just want to maintain my house, improve my living conditions, and send my children to school.
The UN estimates that some 800,000 people have been affected. Aid agencies say humanitarian assistance is needed, but funding remains limited. The UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, together with other partners, have distributed non-food items to some 170,000 refugees, IDPs, and the local community. As of mid-September, UNHCR had received just 38% of $274.9 million it needs for its operations in Sudan.
The ancient art of traditional African storytelling has found an unlikely ally during the COVID-19 pandemic. Because of lockdowns, the Play Africa Children's Museum in South Africa has put its African storytelling project online, broadening the audience to children around the world. Maritza de Klerk has a story from Johannesburg.
Professional storyteller Tembili Tsuma has taken traditional African storytelling onto cyberspace. He was supposed to entertain youngsters on location at the Play Africa Children's Museum in Johannesburg, but the pandemic lockdown changed all that. Now Tsuma is performing online through a camera and computer screen.
Now I am more than like 3,000 people following me on my page, of which is actually the same thing that's also happening to other storytellers and to the Play Africa page.
In Soweto, internet-savvy mum Pamela Selohani holds viewing sessions in a local bookshop.
Some kids don't have the opportunity to actually watch, even on their phones. They don't have access. So I'm like, why can't I let other kids watch with me?
It was a steep learning curve for the storytellers, the Children's Museum and its partner organisation, Asitesh SA, to master the technology and adapt techniques and props to bring interactive African storytelling to Facebook Live. But their efforts have transmitted African story magic far beyond South Africa, despite the COVID-19 lockdown.
They're missing the humanness of being together, and so that ancient art form is now putting a human and a human together again via some zippy technology. We started seeing people from Kenya and elsewhere in Africa connecting. We often see it in Europe, in the UK, families logging on. We've had families from Australia.
Despite clear benefits, online African storytelling must be dealt with carefully going forward, say some.
It may also exclude many people that may not have access to digital space. That's why I said there needs to be care. At the same time, it's also quite important for our stories to be told widely.
Play Africa Children's Museum and Asitesh SA are working on developing complementary educational content and considering ways for wider use of the stories. Maritza de Klerk for VOA News, Johannesburg.
Hello, my good friends. How are you? Well, and that's our show for today. You can find all the continent's top news and world news online at voaafrica.com. Check it out. I'm Vincent Makori in Washington. Channels Television has our last word from Lagos.
We look forward to bringing you another show next week. Remember, channelstv.com is your source for news and other programming. I'm Chamberlain Osor. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.